Hi there. I always have a hard time starting my videos. I'm just realizing this is really bright. I just got a new desk lamp, so it's a little bit better. It's blinding my eyes. You can see my face now. So this is a video about my experience so far with having Asperger's syndrome. I still don't know how to say it. And the issues that affect me as an adult, and the difference between what I have to deal with as an adult and what I dealt with as a child. My family is very, I guess you could say, faithful therapists. I've been seeing a therapist, not the same one, of course, but a therapist at certain centers since I was 6. And when I started seeing them, it wasn't really because of Asperger's. I wasn't diagnosed with Asperger's until I was 11, a preteen. And the main issue I had was with depression. And I was very lonely. I didn't make friends. I wasn't interested in making friends. And at that time, I don't know, I guess they just thought I was really depressed and that I didn't have Asperger's. So I would just get so upset and overwhelmed that I would want my life to end, and that scared my parents. So that's why I would have to see a therapist all the time. So because that's sort of how it started, it's just like the sort of issue as an Asperger's that I have is the way it starts is I just get so hard on myself, sort of, and it just builds up and builds up and builds up, and I have a breakdown or whatever, and I find no interest in the world anymore. I want to be someone else. I want to go somewhere else. I don't want to be who I am, whoever I am. And I would just get to those points, and that's easily seen as depression. So, as a kid, that's really where I was, because I didn't know how to make friends. I didn't want to make friends. I didn't have a whole lot of money, and I was really sort of ashamed that I was kind of poor. And kids would make fun of me all the time, and I would have to deal with that and be like, I don't understand why everyone just doesn't like me. What do I do that's so wrong? And, I'd start blaming myself for doing something wrong, and it's a habit of thinking that I still have to deal with today. And so when I was 11 or whatever, I was finally diagnosed with Asperger's, and um, so I started working with a therapist who worked with me on how to talk to people and how to make friends and how to keep them. The only thing is, I don't have that therapist anymore, and all those skills that she taught me were at the skill level of, a teenager. A teenager, sometimes they get and lose friends, and I never really learned how to find a friend that I could keep for the rest of my life, because when I was a freshman, I had to move away from that therapist. I had to go somewhere completely different because we moved to a different state, and I tried to start up in a different therapist that could help me with this new place, and I just got tossed around from one therapist to another, and I would just have to keep retelling my story and retelling my story and retelling my story because they wanted to hear it from me and stuff like that. So not until this past time around when I went to college and realized that I really had no idea. I was not prepared for any of this. I had no skills to study, to focus on things that I need to focus, because the kind of skills they were using were stuff that worked in high school, and nobody had ever worked with me on how to deal with things in college. I saw a therapist in college, but I could only see her once a month or whatever. I was really busy during college. I couldn't always, get to see her, and seeing her for just an hour wasn't really enough. So I ended up dropping out of college after 2 years, and signed up for a Job Corps like center through a vocational rehabilitation center. And I have to wait 9 months since August, which I'm taping this in March. So a few more months, and hopefully they'll call me, or maybe they just won't, and I'll be stuck in my parents' house, which I'm not happy about. And the therapist I'm seeing now is really understanding of Asperger's, so I'm really lucky there. She doesn't look at me as a person with a problem or with a disease. She makes sense to me, which works really well, because if you have a therapist who just can't understand your way of thinking at all, and you can't communicate your way of thinking to them, it's just a terrible, terrible situation. But I learned that really the worst thing you can do, and if you have to go see a therapist, is to not say anything at all. If you start talking, maybe, hopefully, eventually, they'll understand what you're trying to say. And it's really nice with her, because I kind of gone into this simplistic kind of way. I don't want to waste a whole lot of time being vague, but most of the time some of the things that come out of my mouth are vague. I use a lot of analogies to kind of describe what I mean instead of saying what I mean, because it's part of Asperger's. I think a different way than other people. I use different ways of communicating than other people do. I don't just say what I mean, because I can't come up with the words to say what I mean. And so I'm waiting to learn skills that will help me in stressful situations, because what I learned in high school and things like that was basically, if it's really stressful, take yourself away from the situation. But the thing that would happen, like go play video games or something, is that I would go and play video games for hours. I would get all up in the video game business, and I wouldn't be doing what I needed to be doing. And I'm kind of got that mentality right now where if I don't think that it's worth doing, then I'm not going to do it. If I don't see why I need to, or if I don't want to, I have a habit of doing what I can to avoid doing it if I really don't want to. And, well, you can't do that as an adult. And I know that, but with Asperger's, AS, it's just, you know it, but you don't seem to have the ability to change it unless you work it out yourself. And which is really hard for like my parents, because they tell me what would work, but by telling me, it doesn't make it magically change. I can't just take their advice every single time. I have to make the decision on my own, and it's complicated. So I made decisions now more than I did when I was a teenager, because when I was a teenager, it was basically like, oh, my parents are going to make all the decisions for me. But I made a decision while waiting for getting into this Job Corps like place, that I wouldn't get a job, because if I couldn't deal with college, I couldn't really deal with an adult-like job, even though I worked while I was in college. The thing with working in college is that I went to the kind of college that actually gave you a job. I've never had the experience of how to go through an interview for a job, how to write out I know how to write a resume, but I don't know, how to be tenacious about going out and filling all these applications. I was just like, oh, I don't want to do that. Why can't they just hire me? So, things like that, which this Job Corps Center is really going to help me do. So I didn't see the point in trying to get a job when I knew that I didn't know what was the best thing to do. Besides, I was going to have to tell them that I was leaving anyway, after a few months. So I made sense of that, but just living with my parents is terrible because, like, at least every other month they're like, why don't you get a job? Why don't you get a job? Why don't you get a job? I'm like, I've already told you why I don't need a job. Why do I need to keep telling you? And it just drives me crazy. And, I really don't like living at home, but the thing is, I know I'm not ready to live on my own. Because basically, all I'm eating for lunch is ham sandwiches, corn dogs, or chicken fingers. And that's not really a healthy way to eat. Because my mom normally does all the cooking. I mean, I want a job. I want to be able to cook food and enjoy it all by myself, or have a party and have friends over to a house or apartment or whatever. It's just, I don't know how to make it work. And that's what makes it Asperger's. It's not just a person being lazy and not having done their homework in college. It's, I want to do it, but I don't know how. And someone just can't tell me how to do it and expect me to suddenly be able to do it. It just doesn't work that way for me. And that's one thing that really irks me, is that people are like, oh, I have that problem all the time. I'm like, yeah. And you can get away with it for some reason, and I can't. So that doesn't help me. I hate it when people say that. Oh, I deal with that problem all the time. No, you don't. You get away with it, and I can't. Some reason you can just be lazy and get away with it, because suddenly at the very, very last deadline you can get it done. I can't, because it's too much pressure. It's overwhelming. I actually cannot do what other people who are normal can do, because I'm so overwhelmed by anxiety, emotions, and just freak out. And I don't know how, but apparently a normal person who doesn't have Asperger's or autism or, all those disabilities, they can do that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have come up with the disabilities at all. People think it's just categorizing people. It's not. It's true. It's the way I am. Maybe it's a categorization. That's true. But what I have is the problem that I have to deal with, that is not like anyone else who is not diagnosed with what I have. So, just saying that there's nothing wrong with you, you're just categorized, is wrong. Everyone has something wrong with them. Everyone has issues. Mine just happens to be something that someone named Asperger's knew about and studied and everything else. It's got a name. Some people have issues that don't have names, but that doesn't mean they don't have issues. So that's all for my tangent today. There's not a whole lot of updates. Where I'm going to Virginia for spring break to see my cousin Natalie, and her 3 little kids. A couple years ago, she lived in Jacksonville, and that was the first time I got to see the ocean. I've seen it once since then. So going to Virginia and seeing her again, which she lives near Virginia Beach, so it'll be interesting. First week of April. I may take videos, but sometimes when I'm on vacation, you get to having so much fun having vacation that you're not really taking videos so you can show everyone. But yeah. So that's probably the next thing I'll talk about. And yeah, that's it. I still don't have a cool outro or anything. And my screen just went blank. I've been talking too long. Um, so, yeah. Bye!